Good morning, and thank you for joining me for this Sunday sermon from Holy Saviour Church in Hitchin. I'd like just to read to you a short passage from Mark's Gospel, chapter 8, beginning at verse 27. Jesus and his disciples went on to the villages around Caesarea Philippi. On the way he asked them, "Who do people say I am?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" Peter answered, "You are the Messiah." Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about him. He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. "You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Then he called the crowd to him, along with his disciples, and said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels." You could say that there are two kinds of faith. The first is the faith of those who believe because they follow the traditions of their ancestors, strongly maintaining their tradition of faith. And I suppose we could call that an inherited faith. But the second is the faith of those who've gained it through reason and through philosophical thinking. And you could call that a personal faith. And there are important differences between the two. Those who have an inherited faith have the advantage that they're not easily tempted. Even when confronted with clever philosophical arguments that might contradict their faith, that faith remains strong because of those traditions that they've inherited from their parents and their grandparents. And besides this, they've never depended upon philosophical speculation. But they also have a disadvantage, and it's that their faith is perhaps sometimes not very well reasoned or thought out, and it can frequently be a faith of habit, of routine. Those who have what we call a personal faith, they also have an advantage because they've discovered God with their thought, with their thinking, their reasoning. And for that reason, they're really strong in their faith. But then they too have a disadvantage because they can perhaps be persuaded by logic. And if confronted with very strong contrary arguments, they might then just be tempted to abandon their faith altogether. In order to be able to withstand challenges, faith has to be grounded in something that goes beyond our own personal experience. But maybe the people who gain their faith in both these ways have every advantage because they depend strongly on the traditions of their ancestors, whilst at the same time taking advantage of their ability to think things out for themselves. They thus have the best and most perfect faith. It's not enough in our generation to just be born into faith. A faith that is just inherited can seem like it's second-hand, a bit empty. It's not enough, really, just to say, well, my parents were believers. Every generation has to be converted anew. It has been said that some churchgoers are not much more than baptised pagans. Now, I think that's a bit harsh, but nonetheless, you can sometimes see rather sad, tired faces in church, and faces of people who come late or slip away early. The question that Jesus asks his disciples is the most important question in the whole of the Christian gospel. It concerns the identity of Jesus. He asks the question not for his own sake, but for their sake. And a question forces people to think about what it is they really believe. So first he asks, who do other people say I am? And they tell him. And the answers are way off the mark. Then he turns to them and he says, but what about you? Who do you say I am? And Peter replies, you are the Christ. And the Christ means the Messiah. St. Matthew puts Peter's answer like this: you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And this is the core faith on which the church was founded. It's important for us in 2024 to come up with our own answers, to be able to state our values and beliefs as Christians. It's no longer enough just to repeat answers that we've heard from other people. We have to make the faith our faith, for it to be alive, for it to be real, to be influential in our lives. Our parents' faith is not our faith unless we walk the journey ourselves too. We need to grow in our understanding of the faith, and we need to believe out of personal conviction. And the more of such people we have in the church, the more it is founded on rock. It's clear that Peter didn't really understand what it was he'd said. When he recognised Jesus as the Messiah, he didn't know that Jesus would be a suffering Messiah. That was something he had yet to learn, and he was going to learn it in a very, very brutal, hard way. Peter made a perfect profession of faith. He got it bang on with his words. But then we know that when it came to acting on that faith, he completely failed. And of course, his lowest point was when he denied that he'd ever even known Jesus. This shows us that you and I, we all need God's grace. Not only to profess our faith, but to truly go out and to live it. Our hymn for today is God is working his purpose out, and may God's peace go with you.